Well, 7 retirement hacks with 401k plans that you might need to know. Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, if you got a question for me, I'd love to hear from you. That is the whole purpose behind Prudent Money, is to give you the right questions to ask so that you can seek out information and be a better steward of what God has given to you. So let's talk about where you post those questions. You go to the website, prudentmoney.com. Go up to the top of the page. There is a link. And in that, click through that link, and you will see a box to send in your question. And I do answer those questions myself. Love to hear from you. That's all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. If in the past you have ever sent a question in and not gotten an answer, please resend it, or feel free to call us. The number's on the website, and we'll get you taken care of to make sure that you're getting the information that you need, all at prudentmoney.com. Well, how about 7 retirement hacks that you need to know? Now, what is a hack? You probably heard this in a lot of other different areas, but hacks are shortcuts or tricks that very few people know. I'm not going to suggest that you're not going to know all 7 of them, but there might be some part of some of these hacks that you don't know. So I want to make sure that you've got these and can maybe take this information and use it to further the effectiveness of your future retirement. So let's start with the first one, the retirement tax break that most people overlook. This particular tax break was the subject of a survey by Vanguard, who went in and surveyed participants. 80% of those surveyed did not know that this tax break was even a possibility. I was having this conversation this morning, actually, with a friend of mine at the gym, and we were talking about work and his work in particular. And he said, he goes, I'm getting so close to retirement. And I knew about what his age was. I said, we were probably looking at, did you know that you can retire as early as 55 without the 10% penalty? He had no idea, like most people, that you could do this. If you leave your company prior to age 55, and you retire, you can take the money out in distributions from your 401k plan and not pay the 10% penalty. The way the IRS is set up, there's a 10% early withdrawal penalty, and it's a tax by the IRS. And if you take money out prior to 59 and a half, you out of a qualified plan, which is a 401k plan, which is an IRA, which is any 403b, any type of qualified retirement plan, they're going to penalize you 10% of that money if you are under the age of 59 and a half. If you're over the age of 59 and a half, that 10% penalty goes away. They call this the rule of 55, and this is the way it works. Once again, once you leave the company and you've left your 401k plan there, if the company allows for it, you can start at age 55 taking distributions, money from your 401k plan, and avoid paying the 10% penalty, and use that money to start living off of a retirement plan. So if you're looking at your retirement, you're in your 50s thinking, boy, I've got the money to retire, and I'm really looking forward to doing this. But I hate the fact I have to wait till 59 and a half. You may not have to. You may be able to do it at age 55, when the 10% early withdrawal penalty is not a problem. What questions do you ask? Because you want to make sure that you've got good information, and you're also looking at potentially talking to the company that holds your 401k plan, and you're not talking to your employer. And I realize that any questions that you ask like this will tip off could tip off someone at the company that you're considering retiring. So obviously you got to work through that to get information. But you could just ask your 401k provider. Obviously they don't have any reason to go tell HR or whatnot. Does my company allow for the benefit after an employee leaves? So if the employee leaves at age 55, can they take the money out of the 401k plan without a penalty? Of course, you're going to owe taxes on it, but you are not going to have to pay a penalty. What happens at age 59 and a half? Anything that you need to know. Assume that at age 59 and a half that you want to remove the money from the company and roll it over to your own IRA. Can you do that? Well, you can do that in most cases, but are there any situations that would keep you from doing that? You want to know that as well. Probably not, but good to ask. Can I roll money into my current 401k plan and include that as part of the lump sum at 55? Yes, you can. Once again, though, you want to make sure that there are no restrictions or anything like that. Basically, what this question is asking, say I'm age 53, can I move the $300,000 that I have in an IRA into my current 401k plan? The way the portability rules are is it just say that you can do that. Just make sure that your company allows for it. Just because one company does something doesn't mean that they all do it. You got to keep that in mind. Obviously, the downside, or could be considered a downside, depending on what type of 401k plan that you have, if it's a good one or not, you do have to leave that money at the company. You can't roll the money over to an IRA and take money from that IRA and use the IRA as the funding vehicle. It has to come from the 401k plan, which you do keep at the company. Number 2, the magic of the age of 59 and a half. Did you know that once you turn 59 and a half, let's say that you're employed by XYZ company and you have a 401k plan, you can move the money from your 401k plan at your current employer and move it from your 401k plan, which you're actively participating into your own personal rollover IRA. Most companies allow for employees to do this, and obviously it becomes a great thing if you have a limited 401k plan as far as investment options. Not investments, but investment options, as we know, is very different, that you can spread your money and properly diversify your money over all different kinds of investments, not just stock funds, not just bond funds, where you don't really get the full diversification effect. And so let's say that you're looking at that, you want to move it, you can do that at age 59 and a half without any restrictions. It is a question, though, that you would definitely want to ask, and you're probably pretty safe to ask this as far as you're not indicating you're wanting to leave your job. But if you probably get all the information that you need from the 401k plan provider. And this will allow you to either self-manage that IRA or advisor manage and have your financial advisor take care of all that for you, so you don't have to worry with it. All that you have to do is just focus on, am I doing what I need to do to get to retirement, which your financial advisor hopefully has a good handle on that. Number 3, when can you delay the paying of an RMD? Now, what is an RMD? An RMD stands for Required Minimum Distribution, and this is the amount of money that at age 73, the IRS says, you know what, you got to take a little bit out of that retirement plan pot that you have and pay taxes on it and take it as income, because they don't want all that IRA money and retirement money just staying untaxed. They want some taxes to come out of that. So starting at age 73, by law, you have to take that money out. Unless if you were working at age 73 and participate in a 401k plan. You don't necessarily have to pay an RMD out of the money that is in the current 401k plan, which is a nice deal. Now, not everybody's going to work till age 73, but I do know a lot of people who do. And if you're going to continue your working years beyond that, maybe a couple years, maybe 3 years, maybe just 1 year, it's worth knowing that you can forego taking money out of your 401k plan. Because I know a lot of people who take money out of their 401k plans just because of the RMD law at age 73, not necessarily because they really need the money. So it's kind of a hassle the way that the law is set up. Fortunately, the age has gone from 72 and a half, age 70 and a half, to age 73. But still, it can be a substantial amount of money, maybe 4 to 5% of your total. Now, if you have money that is sitting in your IRAs, so let's say that let's build a scenario. Let's say that you're at age 73, you're at age 71, 72. You know you're going to be employed and working beyond age 73. At age 71 and 72, you do have the opportunity to roll over and transfer into your current 401k money from the current IRAs that you have. So you could have, let's say, $300,000 in IRAs. You have your money in your 401k plan. Well, you know the money in your 401k plan is that you don't have to pay RMD on that. But you will have to pay RMD on your other retirement accounts unless you move that money from your current retirement accounts to your current 401k plan, and you do all that before you turn the year that you turn 73. Now, these are big moves, obviously, and there's a lot of things you want to consider, like is the money invested? Is it working? Do I like my financial advisor? Am I content with where everything is? If that's the case, it may not make sense to move it. But you know that you might have the opportunity to do that and therefore foregoing an RMD on all that money. Now, big disclaimer, please hear me out. You've got to check with your HR to make sure, and the fund company to make sure you can do this and that it is allowable on your 401k plan. Everything I'm talking about today has to be allowable on your 401k. Once again, we're wanting to know and wanting to make sure that the company's 401k plan accepts rollovers prior to you turning 73 and being employed. Also, one other thing that they do point out is that if you are more than a 5% owner, you cannot, this does not apply to you, and you would have to pay your RMD. So this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. We're talking about retirement hacks, actually 7 of them, and we're talking about how you can use these to make your retirement with your 401k plan more effective. Let's talk about number 4, getting proper diversification even when you are using just 2 funds. Now, when you hear of diversification, the thought comes to, or the picture in your mind for most people comes to the idea of spreading the money over a lot of different investments, and that spreads out the risk. And that is the proper way to invest. Diversification obviously is very, very important. But let me give you a couple of different examples. Let's say that you have 10 stock funds and you take your money, you take your $100,000 and you put $10,000 in each one. Have you properly diversified? Well, the problem that you have is it's not that you're not using a lot of different funds, you are, but you're using a lot of funds that do the same thing, which is invest in stock. So I would suggest is that you are not even remotely diversified. You're 100% invested in stock, which has no very, 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 very little, I'll say that, to be fair, diversification in this is present in that type of portfolio. You want different categories of investments. You want bonds and stocks. They're 2 totally different types of investments. Typically, they don't move in the same direction. However, disclaimer, that's not guaranteed, and that has happened over the past 2 or 3 years. So bear that in mind. But generally speaking, when you go through some type of a really bad market decline, bonds tend to, not guaranteed, but tend to, make sure you're hearing me out, they tend to outperform stocks and can provide diversification. Most of your 401k plans just have two different categories of investment, stock and bonds. So we're kind of stuck with that. The ideal situation is that you can find an index that invests in all types of bonds, like a bond index fund, and a stock index fund, which invests in all types of stocks. So you can take your money, if you wanted to go 50-50, you could say 50% in stocks, 50% in bonds, and spread it out that way. Now, critics would say that that's not diversification because you only have it in two different categories. But you got to keep in mind, the two categories of bonds and stocks are typically all we have to choose from in a 401k plan. And each one of those funds has hundreds of stocks in it, the other one has hundreds of bonds in it. So once your money gets into those accounts, they get spread out all over types of hundreds and hundreds of different types of investments. So you're getting a lot of diversification. You're only getting two categories of diversification, which is stocks and bonds. But you work with what you have. And of course, you can control the risk level by determining how much you want in bonds, how much you have in stocks. That's something that a good financial advisor can help you with. Number 5, you can move a 401k plan from a former 401k plan to a new one, even if you have rolled over to an IRA. So let me break that down for you. Let's say that you worked for Company A, and now you're leaving Company A and you have a 401k with Company A and you're going to Company B, where you have another 401k that you've started. And then outside of Company A and Company B, you have another retirement plan that's an IRA. So let's say that you transfer over your money from your old corporate job at Company A and you roll it over into an IRA. And put the money in there. Now, used to, that's it. You can't make any more moves. Today, though, that's not the case. There's portability laws, and I cannot remember exactly. I have to look this up. I can't remember exactly when they came out, but it was, 15, 20 years ago, probably. This says that you can move that money around between what's called qualified accounts. So, in other words, if you moved $20,000 from your old 401k into your IRA, you can move it to your new 401k. And that gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of options. But the bottom line is there's advantages to being able to move that money around into different types of investments. Highly unlikely that you are going to have a 401k plan that's as diversified as a rollover IRA. However, it could happen, and you might want to move your money to another 401k plan. But just know, though, that you do have the advantage of being able to do that. Number 6, our 6th retirement hack is the decision to move your money from a former 401k plan to an IRA. We've touched a little bit on this, but let me talk a little bit more about this. And that is when you get laid off or you decide to leave, whatever the situation might be, you're discontinuing your employment with this current employer, and you're going to go, hopefully go to work for another company. But at this point, they ask you to leave, and you go back into your office, you pack up all your personal belongings, and you take off and you leave that company, and that company is no longer a part of your life. What a lot of people do is they also leave the 401k plan there, which makes absolutely no sense to do that. So it's very important to know that you can take that 401k plan with you and get it into something that works so much better for you. I can't tell you how many times I've moved money from old 401k plans to IRAs, giving my clients a more broad, diverse selection of options. So very important to do that because you could lose, out of sight, out of mind. And that's what I see when I talk to people. They really have no idea how their investments are doing. They, for some reason, could be because they moved or the change of address didn't get put in. They lose connection with their old 401k plan, and they don't get statements. And once again, out of sight, out of mind. And it could be that you left that particular 401k plan invested, which might have made sense 4 or 5 years ago, let's say. Today makes absolutely no sense, and that's just adding to the bad choice of leaving that money. So the hack is always move your money wherever you're going, or put it into an IRA. You can weigh out the pros and the cons. Once again, the IRA is going to bring you the ability to self-manage if you choose to, or have an advisor manage that money for you. And but the biggest advantage to any of this is that you've got a broad, diverse group of investments you can go into. The choice is yours, and you just don't really have that with most 401k plans. Number 7, and I think this is a very important one, is there any time that you don't want to invest into a 401k plan? And this is a very important distinction to make when you look at these 401k plans and you're trying to determine what you're going to do as far as how much money you put into them and what you're going to invest over the long term. But there are 2 different situations that can dramatically change your current situation, and you need to be aware of that. The first one is when you don't have an emergency fund, it makes absolutely no sense to invest into a 401k long term. Now, that, of course, that goes against everything that you're taught and is blasphemy, I guess, amongst the financial services industry. However, it makes sense. If you don't have an emergency account, why does it? It's about you're pouring all this money into a 401k plan. So you don't have an emergency account. You got, say, $100,000 in a 401k plan that you really can't touch unless you borrow against it. There's some pros and cons to that. Then you don't have an emergency fund. You can't get to that because you prioritized the long term over the short term. And this is where it becomes a real problem, and you typically have to go to credit cards to pay for whatever that emergency was. So this is a situation that maybe it makes sense to consider not putting money into the 401k plan and building an emergency fund. And this is, I think, for mostly advice in a retirement hack for those who are just starting out, to build that emergency fund. Now, you might say, well, why would you want to throw away free money? In other words, the company's going to match up to 3% or up to 5%. Then why would you want to throw that away? And that is a good point. So what you might want to consider doing is contributing up to the match you've put 100%, and you get all that employer money that's coming to you. Then if you're going to put, let's say, another $200 in there, maybe you take that $200 and you put that into an emergency account and do both and balance it out. It just depends on your situation. Just know that's one of 2 reasons why you would potentially not want to put money into a 401k plan. And the other one is just what I just talked about. They don't give you a match. And if you're working for a company that has a 401k plan, but they're not giving you a match and there's very little options, I would think twice before doing that and maybe look at funding my retirement through Roth IRAs or IRAs, whatever appeals to you. I like the Roth more myself, and making sure that you are getting this is going to be the most important savings vehicle for you for retirement. Make sure it's a good one versus putting one in that they don't give a match. So just some things to think about. Once again, if you missed any of the prior retirement hacks, you can go to prudentmoney.com and listen to the podcast. That will be posted later. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you have a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. And we are all out of time. Until we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.